please welcome Dr. Sally Rockey.
Like women's suits, our pockets do not open. Well, this is a great honor being asked to speak to you today. I really appreciate your talk, and I think my talk today will follow yours very nicely, because we're going to talk about a new way that we can fund agriculture and aquaculture. So I did spend 19 years with the USDA, running the extramural research program of the USDA, and then went over and was the head of the extramural research program at the National Institutes of Health. And when I was at the National Institutes of Health, I often used a chart that showed the increase in life expectancy over time to demonstrate the power of biomedical research. And so if you looked at this chart from 1900, if you were born in 1900 in this country, your life expectancy was 46. If you, over time now, we know that our life expectancy for women actually is over 80, and for men, it's almost 80. So there's been a great advance in our life expectancy and the quality of our life. And when I was at NIH, of course, I gave a lot of props to biomedical research, but even when I was at NIH, I gave those props as well to agriculture and the power of agriculture, because eating healthy food and safe food and reducing childhood mortality was a big contributor to our increase in life expectancy. So the value of agricultural research and what it contributes to our lives is enormous. And I came from an agency, NIH, that had a $32 billion a year budget, federal budget for biomedical research. And the USDA's budget for agriculture research is about $3 billion. And I would contend that the budget of the United States for agriculture research is not commensurate with the power of agriculture research and the value to our lives. So my foundation was created to increase the pie for agricultural research and to do things in a slightly different way, so that we can fund together with partners really innovative science. So you know that food often is at the root of all major issues facing humanity, whether it be health, our educational performance, our environment, and our security. And I love this quote by Vonnegut. He basically said, when it comes right down to it, food is practically the whole story every time. And so we do really have to think about how we support that science. We are a science, knowledge-based economy. We're a technology-based economy, and science drives most of what we do in our world today. So one of the reasons that our foundation was put into place is to address this issue, and you've all seen this before, that our population is to reach over $9 billion by the year, 9 billion people by the year 2050, and how are we going to do that? And there's really been the idea that meat and dairy production would need to increase about 70% in order to meet the needs of a growing population. In other words, if you're going to have a growing population, there's likely going to be more consumption of meat and, of course, and protein, and that is going to come from not only our traditional protein sources, but also from aquaculture. So just, you all know this, I'm not telling you anything new, but fish provide 3.1 billion people with almost 20% of their average per capita animal protein intake, but only a third of the captured fish are harvested at biologically unsustainable levels, which in other words means that we're using up our supplies. And of course the demand for fish is increasing, and this is a huge opportunity for all of us in this room, but for people around the world. So I think we just saw this slide, in 2023, aquaculture production is projected to surpass total captured fishery production, which bodes well for this industry. By 2025, aquaculture is expected to reach 102 million metric tons, a 39% increase over current levels. And in 2030, we need an additional 30+ million metric tons of sustainably sourced fish. So we've talked about the environment and how we produce an economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable production industry. I'm not going to read this whole quote, but even back in 2009, aquaculture was brought up at the World World Summit on Food Security as being one of the ways in which we are going to produce a sustainable production that's going to allow us to feed the world. So with all of this in mind, not only about aquaculture, but about the fate and the current state, the current situation for agricultural funding, our organization was initiated. So we were initiated in 2014 Farm Bill, and so we were given an allocation out of the mandatory side of your budget. As you know, the way the federal budget works, about 15% of the federal budget is discretionary that goes through the appropriation process. The rest of it is either for the Defense Department and for our programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. So we came out of that mandatory side of the house, and we were given a $200 million investment as a seed startup to get our foundation going. We are obligated to match that money. So part of the thinking about us as a new way of doing business is that we are designed to set up partnerships, whether they be public-private partnerships or partnerships with organizations and individuals who share our goals and objectives. And because of that, in the Farm Bill, for our $200 million, they say we may not expend any of that money unless we come up with a match. So this is both a very big challenge to raise $200 million in what is essentially a very short period of time, but also a great opportunity because it brings people and organizations to our doorstep who say, we have the same goals as you, we'd like to have programs with you, and we have begun to seek out those partners and indeed make some grants with those partners. So we have a great board of directors, very dedicated board of directors. I came on board in 2015, in late 2015, and the board had already been up and running for a year. The previous Secretary of Agriculture, Dan Glickman, is the chairman of my board. We have a number of people from academia as well as industry as well as producers on our board, and they are just wonderful people who are very dedicated to seeing that our organization is a success. And we are classified as an independent nonprofit organization. So in the government, a number of agencies have an associated nonprofit. We call ourselves a 501c3. For example, the FDA has one, CDC, the NIH, the Fish and Wildlife Service, all have a nonprofit associated with them, but the USDA did not. So this was an attempt to bring a nonprofit associated with the USDA, and we are to support the mission of the USDA and to advance the mission of the USDA. But the unique part about us is because we received this funding that went along with us, we in fact are an independent organization in some ways, that we can fund our own projects and are not dependent on the USDA to put in half of the money that we would otherwise fundraise for. So it's been a really unique role, but we have a very, very close relationship to the USDA. In fact, the Secretary of Agriculture, the current Secretary of Agriculture, the head of NIFA, the head of ARS, and the head of the National Science Foundation, and the USDA Chief Scientist all sit on my board as ex officio members. So our goal is to build these unique partnerships to support innovative science. And one of the areas that we look for is areas of science, I'm a little bit behind here. We look for areas of science where there's really gaps or where a small amount of money, an influx of a small amount or an infusion of a small amount of money can really make a difference. Because we run the gamut of almost all agriculture and food research, we really have to be laser focused on where we can put any of our money because we have a small amount and we have to fundraise and find partners for the other half of it. So we build these public-private partnerships, oftentimes in what we call the pre-competitive space, which means that we want the data and the results to be public. After all, it is public funds that supported us. We also oftentimes bring together stakeholders in convening events. So if there's an issue that we think we want to launch programs in, we will bring together the community and we will talk about where we could place our funds, what are the gap areas, what are the areas of innovation, et cetera. We also have a role that we just heard earlier about advancing the next generation of scientists. So that's also an important role. I think I'm just hearing the folks next door. Okay. And our science does not all have to be biological. We can have social, economic, and you're going to hear in a moment about one of our areas which probably has even regulatory science in it. So we can work in a lot of different ways. One way that we work is that we find partners who are willing to support a request for applications. Then we'll put out a request for applications and we'll receive proposals. But because we are a foundation, we can have direct contracts. If we're interested in something and we have a partnership, we can just go ahead and directly fund something that we're interested in. And we can also use prizes and challenges. So prize means that we go out and we say we want this widget, we let everybody compete for it, and when you come back in, you get a big prize if you're the winner. And that we are now currently pursuing prize with the X Prize. I think many of you have heard of the X Prize in the area of urban agriculture. So some of the things to think about us, again, public good. We're very interested because we're taxpayer dollars working in that pre-competitive space, and then finding that area of innovation that we agree upon where there can be very clear outcomes and milestones. So we want research that has actionable outcomes. We want to free up the USDA to do as much of the basic science as they possibly can. It's not that we wouldn't do basic science. If there's an intractable issue where we have to go back and do a piece of basic science, we will do that. But really, because we're generally in partnership with either other foundations, with other commodity group organizations, or with industry, we very often have a very practical outcome to the kind of research that we're going to do. And I wanted to mention to you that Tim Kirk, who's my associate here, he is in charge of our protein challenge. He is going to be talking on session AA17 on Tuesday, which will give you much more specifics about our program. So here are our challenge areas, and we've just announced these. And aquaculture fits into a number of these areas. The first is the protein challenge, of course, where a lot of our animal production work goes in. If we're going to feed the world, we have to be able to produce the protein that we need, as was demonstrated in those stats that I gave you earlier. So we had fun with the name. It's just the protein challenge, so there's a lot of things that can go in there, but aquaculture certainly fits in there to think how we're going to make a sustainable system in aquaculture to produce the protein that we need. Also making my plate your plate. That's about the new food guidelines come in the form of a plate, and the plate includes much more seafood and other types of aquaculture species on it. So if you are, as a nation, going to have people actually eat using the guidelines, how would you produce enough fruits and vegetables, and how would you produce enough seafood in order for everyone to thoroughly adopt the healthy food plate? And the other area that we know that there could be interest here in aquaculture is forging the innovation pathway. That program is really about whole areas of science and or technologies where there's been a lot of work done, but for some reason we've never been able to implement results. There may be regulatory issues, there may be economic issues, there may be social issues, or there may be biological issues for reasons why we are unbeknownst to us, but we want to try to overcome those obstacles so we can get areas supported. So I just mentioned the two areas where we think that aquaculture can fit into. We are very interested in aquaculture because traditionally, if you look at the USDA and the federal portfolio for research, it's much smaller than other types of animal species, so it's an opportunity for us. We also feel because it's such a big growth area, because of the dietary guidelines, and because, as my earlier statistics showed, that it is a real area for growth of the United States and domestic aquaculture that can provide opportunity for producers around the country and for new kinds of products. We're very interested in this. So we're really looking for you as a community to talk and think with us together about, one, where there's gap areas or true areas of innovation that will propel the field forward, and two, where those areas of innovation could elicit a match. So where we could create a partnership with groups to support these projects. So some of the areas that we're interested in, if that's President Trump, just tell him I'll call him back later. Actually, probably, I may or may not, depending how busy I am today. So there's a lot of different areas that we can think about in in aquaculture, so developing alternatives to fish meal, reducing environmental impacts, increasing production efficiency. All the genetics surrounding aquaculture species is incredibly interesting. Disease management, it was mentioned here today, that's a big area, and adapting to changing ecosystems. All of these things we think have growth opportunity in aquaculture. We as an organization have a huge interest in aquaculture and really want to work with you to find some of those sweet spots where we can put some of our money. Just to mention a couple things that we've done already. You had mentioned about an early career award. We ran our first competition, our first grants that we made. Last year we made 9 early career awards. These are for individuals who are in the first 3 years of their research position, their first independent research position like a faculty position. It's open to higher ed, it's open to research institutions, and it's open now to USDA. Last year we made 9 awards, one of which was in aquaculture. And I actually don't know if our recipient, Benjamin Redding from North Carolina State, who works on striped bass heterosis, is he here? No, he's not here, but he was actually, so one of our 9 was a aquaculture project. These awards are designed to help early stage career investigators really stay in agriculture. As you know, all of you who are faculty members, you pursue funding for your research, and oftentimes you go to where the federal agency is that's going to fund you, or you direct your research towards the kind of organizations that's going to fund you. So we gave these individuals a fairly significant award, a $600,000 award, to really get their footing in agriculture with the hopes that they're going to stay and pursue their career on agriculturally important issues. The second, and Tim is going to talk more about this program with you on Tuesday, is Rapid Outcomes for Agricultural Research, where we've positioned ourselves to be able to get money out to you really quickly in the event of a outbreak of a pest or a pathogen. We also do some preemptive work in this area to allow you to prepare for what could be a devastating emergence of a pest or a pathogen. And we're calling for experts. We do need reviewers, so on our website, if you'd like to be an expert with us, please come in. And we also just funded a program to look at, part of our mission is to say, where is the next exciting areas for ag research? So we just supported a program called Breakthroughs 2030 that the National Academy will be looking at where the future innovation and breakthroughs are going to come in agriculture. I do want to mention one other program. For the first time ever, the National Academy of Sciences will have a prize. It's like a Nobel Prize for agriculture and food scientists. It's for mid-career scientists, a mid-career scientist who has had a great impact on our industry and who will, because they're going to be mid-career, continue to have a wonderful impact on our community. This was a joint effort by our foundation and the Gates Foundation, and we set up an endowment there, so this is a prize in perpetuity. It's a $100,000 individual award to someone who has had a great impact. Our first recipient was just announced, and it's actually an ARS scientist, a plant biologist, Ed Buckler at ARS in New York at Cornell, and we really congratulate him, but this will be offered each year. And so because it's food and agriculture, aquaculture scientists will be eligible for that award as well. So here's our website. We'd really love to have more conversation with you about these growth areas. We are looking to spend our money in the next couple years, so we are looking for those great, unique partnerships that will evolve into a truly innovative project. So you are welcome to talk to me afterwards and or Tim. We also go to a lot of professional meetings. We invite you to come to Washington to meet with us if there's something that we really want to work out together. And on occasion, we're happy to come to you where you are if we're interested in a project where we can work out a partnership. So this is really exciting for us. I'm very excited to be here, and